Basically, on the around about the 13th of December, I was contacted by a woman called Patricia from Friends of Australian Wild Horses because they wanted some legal advice. At the time then, it was just like frantic. I mean, I was working on it from 8 a.m. till about 6 at night. So I wrote to Melissa Price, she's the Minister for the Environment, asking whether a part line approval had been obtained. Didn't get a reply. After a few days, I realised that we really weren't getting anywhere. We weren't getting any response. So we put forward an offer this was on the 18th in writing, that the Australian Brumby Alliance would undertake to remove all Brumbies within an agreed time. I put forward that offer with a time frame saying that if we didn't have an acceptance of the offer by 5:30 on the 18th, that we would apply for an injunction. I then got an email at 6 p.m. after the 5:30 deadline from Mike Bannum, advisor to Minister Fawcett, advising that he would discuss that the proposal would be discussed with Minister Fawcett the following day, and we'd get a response to that offer by 6 p.m. The 7 member groups of Australian Brumby Alliance discussed this, worked up what I thought was incredible what they'd worked up in such short notice, an absolute strategic plan to put up stockyards in Singleton, to draw the Brumbies in with hay, divide them up into mares and foals and stallions, and strategically remove them. They had so many floats. It was like a, military exercise in itself. Put that through at 12 noon. And then I got an SMS advising that the cull was underway, and that was at 1 o'clock. It was an overhead helicopter cull, as you know. They herded all the Brumbies to the back of the base, apparently, so no one could see. Everybody was advised that there were landmines, so no one was willing to jump in and run around, of course. All they could hear was a helicopter, repeat shooting, and it wasn't what you might describe someone taking shot. It was repeat, like 20 shots in a minute. So it was a massacre, basically. And yet on the 20th, I got another email saying they were going back to aerially survey. Now, that can only be short to make sure there were no surviving Brumbies. This speaks of cruelty. I knew that during the lead up, I knew that RSPCA had been out to Singleton. They had a meeting at Singleton. I actually, when I heard that was happening, I thought RSPCA might have been stepping in, but it wasn't. They were complicit in the cull. 150 Brumbies, mares and foals were killed. It's just heartbreaking. I really do think the Defence Department, the Australian government thought, the Liberal Party thought that it would just happen over Christmas and perhaps go unnoticed. But it was the actual opposite that happened. Basically, it's people trying to take shot at a moving animal. And, it's not about a marksman, it's a moving helicopter. And for example, at Singleton, it's quite bushy in parts, and the horses would have splintered off in all directions, they would have been terrified, and you would have had mares falling, weak mares falling, young foals being crushed by galloping horses. Marksmen would have been trying to take aim at horses and missing, and obviously hitting where they could. That's what a cull is, an overhead cull, and that's what happened at the Guy Fawkes National Park. And many people said this will never happen again because of the cruelty over that overhead cull. That's why they were so careful about herding the Brumbies to the back of the army base so that no one could film, no one could see. And there was a very clear, well-designed plan to remove the Brumbies without having to go through an inhumane cull. I think they just wanted a swift removal. So what has been discovered by just stumbling across, we've discovered master plans for a massive redevelopment at Singleton Army Base. We don't know whether it's approved or whether it's final plans or whatever, but it's a significant multi-million-dollar redevelopment of the Army Base. Whether it's the sort of thing that Minister Pyne might put out just before an election about so many billions of dollars being invested in defence, we don't know that. Perhaps this is why they had to get, well, in their minds, they wanted to get rid of the Brumbies in the most expedient way in their perspective, which it wasn't. The defence was saying the Brumbies cause erosion. Well, there were about 150 Brumbies on, I think it's 44,000 acres. I mean, come on. And it was dangerous for the soldiers. I mean, how ridiculous. And yet they can take a helicopter up and shoot into the ground and around Brumbies. What about the landmines? The RSPCA know that a helicopter cull cannot be humane. You know, they've permitted that and they say it's humane. It cannot be. So I don't know how RSPCA can condone that. Fertility control is obviously something that Australian Brumby Alliance has been looking at. In fact, they ran a symposium of some sort not very long ago on that in Brumbies. I think there are some issues insofar as fertility control with Brumbies, but that is one control. Humane trapping, rehoming. There are a lot of ways of dealing with any introduced species other than an overhead cull. It needs to be humanely managed. Let's face it, the Brumby is an Australian icon, and I think people aren't very happy about the way the Australian Brumby has been treated yet again. You can tell which side of the fence people are on, obviously, when they call them feral pests, or they're actually Australian Brumbies. They're a particular breed of Australian horse, a very special breed that's evolved and developed to be able to survive in what is a fairly rugged environment, not unlike the Australian dingo. I mean, they survive. I think, now that we're talking about the fact that Brumbies are seen as feral species, at the moment in Victoria there's an issue with Brumbies in the Barmah National Forest, where they've been living for 180 years. 11 years ago it was decided to flood the Barmah and create the Barmah area to create wetlands. But when they decided to do that, Goulburn Murray Water did it. There are actually a number of Brumbies marooned in areas of the Barmah forest, and even Brumbies within the national park are struggling to survive. Parks Victoria are prohibiting people from going into the park, national park, to feed them. So there's a rather unfortunate situation arisen at the moment. It's a bit of a head-on position between Parks Victoria and the group, because they're feeding the Brumbies on land near the forest, but it's not going too well. A lot of Brumbies are dying. There's a horrific video of a mare dying just recently. So that's another. It's just Brumbies are not recognised for their qualities, they don't have to be anyway. They're sentient creatures and they should be treated with respect. The group should be allowed to feed them, set up a management plan. If Parks Victoria think there are too many, let the group take them out and have a proper management plan. So that's what's happening in Victoria at the moment. The Brumbies have been in there for 180 years. So were released into the forest by young men who went off to the war, young Anzacs. It's just these Brumbies are part of Australia's culture, as are the Singleton. These Brumbies are a special strain. The Barmah Brumbies are, as I said to the committee member I'm working with, we have to make sure we've got to do this. We've got to get them out. We've got to make sure that they can be fed so they can get their strength. God knows how those poor horses that are marooned within the wetlands, although I noticed that the tap, as they call it, has been switched off. The problem is the roadways, even where the Brumbies might otherwise get out if they were strong, are 2 metres underwater. You know, so even as I said to them, can't we throw hay from an aeroplane? And I was told, yeah, at $4,000 a day. So it's a real problem. Another, issue. But at the moment, what we're hoping to achieve is a workable plan with the Minister for the Lily D'Ambrosio to set up, to authorise Parks Victoria, and she can do that. She has that discretionary power to authorise them to allow the Brumby group to feed the Brumbies, and hopefully that will happen. It's a war against animals.